Okay, so we've seen the while loop a few times now. What I'd like to do in this tutorial is give you a challenge, see if you can code this up yourself. What I want you to do is, I want you to ask the user how many times they want to run the loop, and then the loop will run that many times, okay? So don't overthink it. It's actually a lot more simple than you think to write. All you need to do is you need to have some sort of prompt for the user. So let's just write out the pseudocode, what we need to do. Well, we know we need to prompt the user with a message, essentially saying, how many times do we want to run the loop? I think that was the quietest I've ever been recording one of these videos, LOL. Okay, the next thing you want to do then is you want to wrap that and just convert it to type number. So we've seen this before. We can use that inbuilt power in JavaScript, use number to convert the data type to number. Because remember, even if the user, if you prompt them, you store it in a variable, and they have, pressed 4, 5, 6, 700, whatever the case may be, uh, it's one of those weird behaviors of JavaScript where it's taken in a number as a string, so just convert it to type number and store it in a variable. And then lastly, use the while loop to run code over and over again. And in the condition, you can run the loop X amount of times, while some condition is less than, the amount of times the user has instructed us to do. Okay, so see if you can pause the video and do this. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to code this out now, so feel free to, I suppose you could say watch. Well, we know we're going to have to prompt the user, right, to tell us how many times they want to run. So what we can do is we can just say prompt, okay, so we know we have to use prompt. We know we're going to have our parentheses. Inside of that, we have some sort of string message we want to log out to the user, and then we're going to have a semicolon to end the statement. So what I'm going to do is just ask them, how many times how many times do you want to run the loop? Okay, maybe give them a little smiley face or something. That's nice. Okay, so we have our prompt, right? But remember, if the user presses a number on their keyboard, we're getting that as type string. So we want to just convert that to the number data type. So I have one parentheses there. And at the end here, I shouldn't have done the smiley face, it's confusing me. We're going to have another parentheses there. So that's good, right? We have our prompt and we are converting it to type number. I've given it away, but we haven't actually stored it in a variable. So that's what you want to do because we want to keep some sort of record or track of how many times we're supposed to run the loop. So we could say let, and what we can do is just say times, okay, let times, the number of times we're going to run the loop, or iterations. Iterations would be a good one. I'll just leave it at times, okay? So let times equal to this prompt here, converted to data type number, okay? So now when I refresh the page, we see here how many times do you want to run the loop. I press 4, nothing happens, okay? Nothing has happened, okay? So we want to store that in a variable. So what are we going to do? Well, let's write out the syntax for a while loop. Well, we know that we have to have a counter variable somewhere. So we could say let counter be equal to, we'll start at 1. Then we're going to have a while loop. So while, now we're going to run the loop while some condition is true. So all we want to do is essentially say run the loop while our counter variable is less than or equal to times the number of times the user wants us to run. So for example, if they were to press 5, okay, and we're initializing our counter variable at 1, well, is 1 less than or equal to 5? Yes, it is. Therefore, we enter the loop and we run some code. Obviously, we want to increment increment our counter variable using the increment operator. So from habit, I was going to type I++ there, but I've called the counter variable counter. So I want to say counter++, okay? And then we just want to run some code. We'll just log out to the console, loop number And don't worry, the further we get into this course, the more we're going to start doing more interesting stuff rather than just logging stuff out of the console. But this is good practice. You're asking the user how many times they want to run the loop. So let's have a look. So we're prompting out to the user this message. How many times do you want to run the loop? We give them a smiley face because we're nice. Okay. So keep track of your parentheses. So that parentheses there closes with that parentheses. Then have another parentheses because that's all wrapped and being passed in here to number. So then we have times, the number of times we want to run the loop. So we initialize our counter variable here. So we initialize our counter variable called counter, and we're going to run the loop while counter is less than or equal to times. Okay, so let's say they press 5, console.log. We enter the loop because 1 is less than or equal to 5. Okay, so the loop's going to run. We're going to log out loop number 1, increment or counter 2, loop number 2, increment counter 3. 3 is less than or equal to 5, loop number 3, increment counter 4. 4 is less than or equal to 5, so that will run. And then finally 5 is less than or equal to 5. 5 is less than or equal to 5, that will be valid to true. Therefore we log out for the last time console.log loop number 5, and then counter plus plus. 6 is not less than or equal to 5, it's greater than, so the loop will stop running. Prove that to you. Let me just save and refresh. How many times do you want to run the loop? Let's press 5. So we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the loop ran 5 times. We can also put in a bigger number if you wanted. For example, if the user wanted to run 101 times, let's have a look. And there we go. We've ran the loop from the number 1 all the way up to 101. Okay, so that was just a little bit of a challenge there in JavaScript where you're asking the user how many times they want to run the loop. Okay, that's awesome. I'll see you in the next tutorial.